Nah, we don't need to.
let's wait for the Japanese Grand Prix.
Yeah. All right. Okay.
Supposed to be wet.
Here we go.
Put all of this. Don't cut it out.
Okay. Dear Yuki Tsunoda, welcome to Red Bull. How's things, man? Welcome to the Blatantly Biased Racing Podcast, by the way, everybody.
Yeah. Welcome to all 360 something of you.
Yeah. We have enough. We have a subscriber for every day of the year now, which is cool.
Yeah, which is a nice thing. We can fill a small hall, by the way.
It's a very small hall, yeah. Actually, it's a reasonably sized hall. Actually.
It's a big hall. Come on, 360 is a lot of people.
Yeah, that's true, yeah.
Anyways, Yuki Tsunoda to Red Bull.
Mm-hmm.
What was your... By the way, full disclosure, as soon as we recorded, it was, I think, 2 a.m. my time when we ended the recording. It was 3 a.m. when the fucking announcement was made.
Well, in fairness, it wasn't the official announcement. It was like from... it was some leaks that we kind of knew as soon as those leaks came out. This is true. It just depends on how long we'll be waiting for Red Bull to officially announce it, which was 2 days later, I think.
It was on Thursday that they announced it,
Yeah.
So
yeah.
Okay, let's start first of all with Yuki Tsunoda before anyone else. First of all, great opportunity for him.
Mm-hmm.
But I think, again, it's something people are not looking at. I think this was probably the best case scenario for almost everyone that was involved.
Yeah.
Be it Red Bull, be it Liam, be it Yuki. Because, I mean, just to break it down simply, for Yuki, I think I was the only one who predicted that in 2026 he might not even be on the grid. There was a very serious possibility.
Yeah, I thought so too, because I don't think there's any chance that Aston Martin takes him on.
Exactly.
Because that was really the only place to go was Aston Martin, potentially Haas if there was issues there, just because of Toyota, the Japanese link, maybe.
Yeah, Cadillac.
I know it's Honda, Cadillac in 2026 maybe as well. But yeah, I didn't see anywhere else for him to go. And also,
just come with a lot of money, and he's decent, he's good, but he's not a call up into. Let's put it that way. Right?
And like if you look at the other teams, you've got to ask yourself as well, like, well, why haven't like Red Bull have had numerous chances to put you forward? Why haven't they? It's like the guy who's like works at a place and never gets a promotion for 6 years.
Some people say the R word, but that's not true.
Yeah. But but no, it's obviously not. But like the point is, like it's like if you worked at a place for 10 years and never got a promotion. Yeah. If you went for an interview, they're going to ask you why would you not get a promotion? You must not be that good. So I'm sure that waned over. I think it's a good excuse for him, or it's a good move for him, and I think it's a good chance for him to kind of show what he can do. It could also go spectacularly wrong. Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
And I think Yuki needs to be a little bit careful about saying things much like Liam said. Yeah. Oh, no, I tested the car. It felt fine, at least in the simulator. It's like, Yuki, shut up. Don't stop. Just stop. Yeah. Hey, just a quick interruption because we have a problem here, which is that for the last few months, we've been saying that if you're offended, subscribe. We've kind of been saying that. We've been saying if you're not offended, don't subscribe. It's the same thing. I'm sure you understand English if you're watching this, so you've got it, I'm sure. But turns out 60% of you have not been offended. And I just can't sleep. I don't know about you, Casual. I just can't sleep at night knowing that we haven't offended 60% of the audience. I think we need to start. You sleep okay? Well, I haven't, because there are 7.5% of you are Indians that haven't been offended. For example, I think we just need to fix this. So I'm just going to take a minute of your time to just make sure that everyone watching this is thoroughly offended. So I've written down a couple of things, Casual, and you can tell me if you think this is offensive enough. So let's offend those Hindus and Indians first, quickly.
Oh, Jesus. Okay. Oh, Jesus, no. Don't do that.
Is that too offensive? No? Okay.
You don't live in India.
Yeah.
And I'm not a Hindu.
Right.
Yeah.
Is that offensive? So that is offensive then?
That's not only offensive, that's going to get me lynched. So please don't do that.
All right. Well, I'll think about cutting it out afterwards. Is there? By the way, 15% of you watching are British, and I'd just like to say that your sports cars now are so gay that the best selling model is the LGB GT. No? Offensive? No?
Maybe.
And of course, the 20% of Americans here, there's no need to insult you because you'll just do what you always do, which is show up after everyone else has done the hard work. So we'll probably cut that Hindu joke out, should we?
Yes.
Yeah? What I'll do is...
I'm still too young to die.
Okay. So... If you have been offended, please subscribe. If you haven't, then tell us how we can offend you and we'll subscribe you. And if a lot of Indian people subscribe, we'll maybe show you a behind the scenes of what that joke was at some point. Thank you, everybody. Now back to the podcast.
I think there's one thing which I like about him. I think he knows. I think he's gone a bit YOLO, kind of. His approach has been that he knows that there's a high possibility that he would not even be on the grid next season.
Yeah.
This is his opportunity to either make it or break it, and he's going all in. Now, whether that works or not, usually it doesn't when it comes to being a Max Verstappen teammate. But at least he's just going in. He's trying not to get bogged down by the pressure, which would be a lot. I think a bit refreshing. Honestly, I like that. I liked when Liam had a somewhat similar approach. It fucked him over, but yeah, it's
This is the thing, though. Like, I part of me goes, I think Yuki will do well because, like he is a very fast driver. I think he is very likely to be able to kind of handle that kind of sensitivity that has been talked about. Mm-hmm. But the problem with that is, coming into the preseason, I would have said this. Well, I did say the same thing about Liam
Lawson.
So I genuinely don't know right now, and it's a worrying situation where, like, Max is extracting the performance still from the car, but even he is saying the car is tricky to drive. And when Max is saying it's tricky to drive, it's fucking tricky to drive. You know, like, so... Yeah,
it is tricky to drive. It's
amazing livery for the weekend, though. That's the important part, right?
Amazing what?
Livery for the weekend.
Beautiful.
Beautiful.
Stunning. I love it. I don't understand why Honda does not use a similar livery for MotoGP because, I mean, again, it has a classy livery, but that white is just beautiful.
Yeah.
It takes you back to World War II, but we should not talk about that.
Let's not talk about kamikazes on Yuki's first weekend.
Exactly. Yeah. It's just that I think it's still, honestly, look, if anyone was in a situation where you knew that your time was probably up in Formula One and you were handed this opportunity, you'll take it with both hands. Just live it up as much as you can. Marco has said that he's not going to be replaced until the end of the season.
In fairness, they did say they would give Liam time.
I mean, yeah.
They gave him 2 races.
Yeah, time.
But
still, they gave time.
The problem this time is Marco might be correct in that, and that's one of the few things Marco says these days that's actually accurate. That, if that is accurate, it might just be the case of they've no one else to fucking replace him with. So,
actually, in between the lines, that's exactly what he meant.
Yeah.
Okay, what's your just early prediction? What do you think happens with Yuki?
I think he does better than Liam, but that's quite that's a low bar. I hate saying this as well because I really wish they had given Liam this weekend. I know it's beautiful that it's Yuki. They're in the Honda livery. It's a great story. But for Liam's career, I kind of wish they had just given him at least this weekend because this is a track where he spent half a year racing around, so he knows this track. But then I think the clear option was his confidence was shot. So my prediction for Yuki this weekend is I do think he'll finish at least in the top 10. But I think he'll be if he can finish 4/10 off of Max, that would be good enough. And the problem now is that because the field is so close, 4/10 could be outside the top 10. So in qualifying as well as the race, that way, it
not
could
in
be.
the race. I think in race you can still see
Kinda
that
catch up
after there is still. I'm slightly disappointed that the gap is still there, as in the top 4 and the bottom 6.
Yeah.
I'd hope that maybe there would be a bit of an overlap maybe we'll see a bit of maybe Williams, Aston Martin just
Well, in
mixing
fairness,
things up.
if it depends on who's driving, right? Because from what I've heard from comments recently, that if Max was in the Racing Bulls, he'd be winning anyway. So
He'll be lapping the field. Don't diminish his qualities. So yeah. Not true, by the way. That's not going to happen. That's
the thing is, just to point.
You're going to go on this rant for the third time.
No, I'm not going to go on this rant. Can I just point out one thing to people here? You can't share wind tunnel data and CFD data with other teams, even if you're Red Bull and AlphaTauri or Red Bull and VCarb. However, Red Bull absolutely 100% can tell each other which car is faster without sharing like actual data. So if Red Bull thought for a second that the Racing Bulls was actually faster, Max would already know about that and would be talking about it. So anyone who thinks that, like, Red Bull would know this and it would have slipped out. So it's not faster. Cop on.
Especially since everything slips out from Red Bull camp these days.
Yeah. Because Helmut Marko just tells everyone everything. So it's,
Yeah, that seems to be the
case. As well as the anyway, I'm not talking about him again.
We know. By the way, you touched on one very key thing, why they did not give Liam more than 2 races. And I think there is maybe a hint of it in what Helmut has gone on pretty much a media spree.
That's because he's not doing any other jobs. So
no, that's because he was the one who made the call, and he's basically being forced to lap up and basically clean the shit that he actually made with the entire situation.
Well, he's made some good choices over the last couple of years, hasn't he? He's De Vries, Lawson. Never mind. Moving on. Yeah.
I think there was maybe a scenario similar to what happened with Gasly that has happened with Lawson, that he probably had either he's acted out, or maybe there's been a sign that the shoulders have dropped a bit too much and they think that there is no way back for him. That's why they took the call as early as China. I think that is probably something that might have happened, because Marko mentioned it twice or thrice that Liam was a bit like a battered boxer. That is one quote that has been almost every interview. Another quote was, we had to save him and take him out. There's some logic to it. Again, they won't say that you have to give. It's very hard to give Red Bull credit in anything it is doing right now, but there is maybe some credit where they are. Look, Lawson is there. You can say someone they've brought up. Moving him to Racing Bull, which is a car where he can actually express himself.
Yeah,
it's actually a good call for his career.
Yeah.
Right. So
he should end up at the very, like, if he never goes back to Red Bull, which I don't think he will, because that's not something they do generally.
Yeah.
But at the very least, he could have a Gasly, Albon type career where
they're not bad careers in any way.
No, where he proves himself and ends up in the field for 10 years, kind of, between different teams. And who knows, like, we've seen people in the past like that kind of end up in a team that just out of nowhere suddenly is winning, fighting at the front again. So it can happen.
I mean, the biggest example is the 2020 season where Gasly was molly whooping Albon, and Gasly was in an AlphaTauri and Albon was in a Red Bull. Which is just, look, you have to. Again, there are a lot of criticisms that Red Bull deserves, honestly, which with the situation that they find themselves in. And honestly, I tried to listen to the race podcast that they recently did on the entire situation. My God, that was 1 hour, 10 minutes of just bashing Red Bull. At a point, it became a bit too much for me, as well, because it reached a point where it's a bit like Max Verstappen is probably, because they also had a Viaplay pundit on board.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
It
I
became a
listened
bit
to it
like,
as well. Yeah.
I think you know the vibe when I say that it's probably Max driving the car and managing everything, papering over the cracks and stuff. And maybe to a certain extent, but maybe we are probably short selling the fact that this team was nowhere last season by Monza, and then they brought the upgrade in Austin. Max was on pole. He won a couple of races afterwards. It didn't happen out of the air, and it happened from this same technical team.
The problem is that I've seen a lot of people say, like, oh, it's time for Vache to go, and it's time for this to happen, and it's time for this to happen. And I think it's just like typical Formula One recency bias, like not actually thinking about things logically, which is, look, Red Bull weren't expecting to be in this situation, right? And that's something they fucked up on. And I think that is where, Adrian Newey called on some of this stuff apparently in 2023. He talked about it to them.
When you're talking about this situation, you're talking about the driver or the car?
No, I mean the actual car itself.
Okay.
The car that's kind of got them into this unfortunate situation, which is that like Newey called on some of this stuff, and clearly him and Vache and the team had some differences, and they probably should have listened to Newey because he's conceptually thinking from the outset and kind of, he's not there in the day to day, but he's going, look, this will lead us down this path and X and Y. And I think they should have listened to that. But also the thing to give them credit for is, they built the most dominant car in Formula One history. That was a year and a half ago, right? Then last year, for nearly half the season, the first 8 races, something like that, they had the fastest car by a mile. So a third of the season. And then everything changes. And the problem is that Red Bull found themselves in is the Mercedes or Ferrari problem we're seeing at the moment, which is they probably could have opened up the balance and fixed the car to be easier to drive. But the offset of that is we have to get rid of all the performance and essentially start from the ground up again. And we've only got 1 season left of this regulation set. So Red Bull is between a rock and a hard place. And the problem is people love to do the whole, Red Bull screwed up and we should start throwing out the top team. And it's like, or you should look at it as, well, the logical decision was probably correct. Let's stick with a difficult but fast car and hope that, we can fix a situation where we can slowly help to kind of open up some of the balance and kind of fix some things. But yeah, that's the thing that I just find funny. People just immediately like, the Racing Bull's better. It's like, no, the Racing Bull is better because it's a slower car. And if you have a slower car, it's easier to balance. Like that's, simple as like.
It's an understeery car and they are easier to drive, but maybe they don't have the same peaks as an oversteery car.
And as soon as if they put Max...
words, not mine.
Yeah, and as soon as they put Max in there and Max says increase the front end, that car would become increasingly difficult to drive, but slowly faster as well. So basically, what Racing Bulls have now is what Red Bull would have to do, in my opinion, if they wanted to start getting a balanced car, which is take most of the performance off, make the car more benign, easier to drive, and then slowly put performance back on. And if you do that, you're just riding off the whole season. And we've only got, because it's the last season. It's not like they can go, right, we fucked up, we need to fix this now, and then we can focus on next season, because next season's completely different. So
and I think this is where just turning pages onto what Red Bull kind of need to do next. For me, the biggest worry is Red Bull, their actions and their words are not matching, which is a bit of a concern for me.
Yeah.
Because what you're saying is exactly how it is supposed to be and how I honestly expected the season to go. Until now, in the first 2 races, what I have seen from Red Bull is something that has not surprised me whatsoever.
Mm-hmm.
This team was, I think Max was around half a second or something slower than pole position lap time in Abu Dhabi last season.
Yeah.
So from that point onwards, he's reached a point where he qualified on the front row, or I think P3 something, 3 tenths behind in Australia. He was 3 or so tenths behind, I think, again in China. So that means they've cut the gap to the front.
Mm-hmm.
And he's only 8 points behind Lando Norris, which is nothing. Which is basically P1, P2. That is it.
Plus, we've got a technical regulation change in 6 more races. Plus, we've got lots of variation in tracks where
they
things
made
can
a change already, apparently, which the DRS thing. I think it's not DRS. It's apparently the fact that the rear wing itself was flexing. So that's where they've made a change, and apparently McLaren is the team that got affected with that.
Yeah.
And regardless of that, the reality is, if you're almost half a second behind the front runner by the end of last season, that gap is not going to dissipate out of the blue. And that is especially not in a scenario where the regulations are as stable as they are right now.
Mm-hmm.
Closing a couple of tenths, it's a good thing. It's still a stable platform. From here, it's going to be hard for Max, understandable. There are going to be upgrades which are going to be crucial. The next set of upgrades, which is probably going to be in Imola, they're going to be crucial for Red Bull, because from there, they can start closing the gap to McLaren.
Yeah.
But this is still, it's a workable window. 3 tenths is not end of the world.
No,
especially
it can be fixed in the season.
Yeah. And it is basically a margin of error where Lando fucks up a qualifying or Oscar fucks up a qualifying, Max is right there. Yep. And that is how they have to... honestly, they have to be very honest about this thing, that this is the situation we are in. How we are tackling with it is, we are going to try and maximize everything. What is our advantage or our strength? It's the operational unit. Every race, we are capable of getting the maximum out of whatever we have. Other teams are not. We're going to bank on that. We're going to get just keep churning out points again and again and again, and put pressure on McLaren for to either choose one of the drivers, or make both drivers make mistakes.
Yeah.
That is how they have to approach this championship. And their actions seem to be that, but what they're saying, it's not matching.
Yeah,
because
it doesn't really.
Yeah, the way they are sounding, it sounds a bit like crisis, honestly. And
Yeah.
I don't think they are in a position of crisis per se.
I mean, like, especially not if you look at the other teams in that kind of sector, you know, like compared to Ferrari, for example, like who is completely in shambles at the minute. And then you've got like Mercedes, because of George Russell, look kind of relatively competent. But yeah, like the problem is Red Bull is just in this situation. And I think that's where the Lawson decision just didn't make sense in the first place. But it's easy to say that with hindsight. Maybe they thought, it was worth taking a punt. But it's easy to look at it now and just go, obviously that was never going to work. But yeah, I think the thing is, like, this was the only option they have, and I think they knew that, and I think they have to stick with that. So yeah, I agree. I think they knew all of this was a potential when they came in, and I think that they maybe are banking quite a bit on the front wing flexi update. That it'll bring back some of their performance.
It should.
It should bring back, yeah. And I mean, look, at the end of the day, even if it brings back 1/10 of their performance, all of a sudden then you're within, like I say, that 2/10 like driver absolutely makes the difference, So yeah, like that could be a huge boon for them in Barcelona onwards. And you're only talking like a third of the race done. So if Max can just literally do what he's doing, which is get the most out of the car until then, and then it swings a little bit.
Yeah.
I don't think it'll swing that
DNF
much.
away,
Yeah.
by the way. It's one DNF away. Either of the two drivers Oscar had a bad race in Australia. Lando had a subpar race weekend in China.
Yeah, it wasn't great, yeah.
Yeah, and again, Max is right there. You continue doing that again and again. And there will be moments where actually the Red Bull is faster. Look, all these Suzuka will also be on the similar kilt. I think Australia, China, and to a certain extent Suzuka, they are the tracks which are basically, it's copybook McLaren. Fast speed sections, and specifically focusing on, at least in case of Australia, keeping the rear tires alive. When you have these kind of requirements, that's where McLaren seems to thrive at this stage.
Yeah.
And maybe in the races in the future, from the 4th or 5th race, you might not see that kind of advantage. Lando has been quite vocal in saying that McLaren might not be the favorite in Bahrain.
Bahrain, because of the wind
Pretty
sensitivity,
possible.
yeah.
Exactly. And even in a race like Jeddah is not a track which you can just assume that McLaren will be great. They will be great in the first sector, but then there are other sections as well. So
yeah.
It's
Plus,
game.
Like, we're not even accounting for the fact that, like, even without the Barcelona change, all the teams are bringing upgrades. Like, McLaren's going to be bringing upgrades, but Red Bull are bringing a huge upgrade in Imola, apparently. So there's all these different things. And like we've seen in the past, where especially when you're getting like right up to these regulation, like the boundaries of them, an upgrade could not work, and all of a sudden, McLaren are a couple of tenths down, and things can change very quickly this season. Yeah. It's a really strange one where I'm seeing a lot of people, especially on F1 Twitter, is kind of the cesspit of cesspit of F1 knowledge. But I'm seeing a lot of people write this off as like, it's a done season, and it's like, are we watching the same season? Like, I don't.
Yeah.
And if you are, like, have you watched Formula One for a while? This is an incredibly close. The only thing I agree with is I think I was hoping that the back of the field would be a little bit closer to the front of the field. But you know what? If we get 4 teams at the front, 3 teams, and then Ferrari get their act together, hopefully we can...
in at least 10 of the 24 races they will. So.
Yeah. Or 5. A few of them anyway. Yeah.
Just to keep the Tifosi hopes alive.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, just for Red Bull, what do you think ideally, overall, their approach needs to be for 2025 and 2026? What do you think their approach needs to be? As in, if you're Christian Horner right now,
I think
how would you approach the whole
the thing
situation?
is 2026 is a complete unknown, and I think that if you're Red Bull in this situation, I think you're close enough that you need to really just fight for this season, because if they win this season, I think that garners you like a season or two of, okay, well, things went shit in 2026, but we can bring it back. Whereas if they lose this season, like both the constructors and the drivers, if they win one, is what I mean. If they win the drivers, for the constructors, I just don't think it's going to happen, because even if Yuki's good, he needs some time to embed, all these different things. And they're already points behind because of Liam. But yeah, if they can get the drivers this year, I think maybe that buys them 2026 to kind of take a bit of breathing space, figure out what's going on, and kind of start the revival. If they lose this season and 2026 is bad, that's a huge problem for Red Bull, because they will just lose Max. That will be Max gone, in my opinion. So yeah, I think that they need to do the one thing that other teams can't, which is just put a lot of attention onto this season. The problem I think Red Bull faces is that they did that in 2021, but they had a couple of things going for them. One, the regulations that we're currently in were extended because of COVID, which gave everyone a little bit of, help. But two, they also were in that position where they had Vache, they had Dan Fallows and everyone working on the 2021 car, while Newey could kind of have his team continuing to focus on the 2022 car. And they don't have that right now with 2026. So, yeah, I think they should not put any, I'm not saying not put any sway on 2026, but I think they should heavily weight their attention to this season, because they're close enough to win until a point comes where they just can't win anymore. If that point comes, obviously then, all battle, move everybody over. But I think that at the moment, 8 points, as you said,
it's not,
it's nowhere near over. If we get to race 9 in Barcelona and they're 80 points behind and the update to the Flexi Wings hasn't made a bit of difference, fair enough. Okay, right, look, we just need to give up on this season. But at the moment, no, it's,
way too close.
It's a tough one though for Horner, isn't it? Because the more I think about it, the names that they've lost they've lost quite a few people, big people. So, and sorry, I'm sure we'll talk about Horner in a minute, but the names that they've lost, the big names that they've lost, I think Red Bull, and this is the problem with people wanting to go on extremes and jumping, I think Red Bull should be given a little bit more credit about how well they're performing given who they've lost over the last couple of years. Given who's not in the team anymore. It's actually pretty impressive that they're beating Ferrari, for example, beating Mercedes, for example, given who they've lost.
I think that's fair to a certain extent. Look, you can only keep people for so long.
Mm-hmm.
Jonathan Wheatley was given an opportunity to be a team principal. He was going to leave. He was given an opportunity to do that with Audi. There's nothing that, there's only one thing that Horner could have offered, which is basically stepping aside, letting Wheatley take over. Yeah. And that was not going to happen.
No.
Wheatley was going to go. Newey is a tricky one, because I also think that after a point he felt stagnated. It's been 20 years that he's been a part of Milton Keynes, and at some point it becomes there's no motivation left.
The worst time to lose him though.
Yeah, 100%.
Because if they had lost him in 2026, it would be okay, well, at least we've gotten the baseline for our new reg set.
Yeah, but I do think that the team had already moved on from Newey, and they started moving on in 2014 when he kind of took a hard stop.
Yeah. They've been preparing for this for a long time.
Yeah.
But you are seeing, I think, some of the
impact.
Yeah. It's that high level thinking, right? Of not having someone sitting back and kind of looking at it from outside the box. I think that's what they need.
Exactly. And even Rob Marshall, not to forget him.
I think Rob Marshall right now is blow. Yeah, I think that's possibly their biggest blow at the moment. In terms of, I think Adrian
Newey's acknowledges, by the way.
Yeah. I think Adrian Newey's effect we'll see in 2026. I think we're seeing the loss of Rob Marshall right now, and even maybe Dan Fallows as well. Like, I mean, like Dan Fallows, I think maybe not set to lead a team, but I think there's input there and certain strengths there that they're missing.
Yeah, obviously.
Yeah.
It's just that when these many people go, a team usually needs time to, regroup and get back to a certain respectable position. I think the problem that Red Bull faces right now is it does not want to. It wants to shortcut its way to success.
Yeah.
It seems like that. I hope they don't. I hope they just start being a bit realistic and take it step by step, because if they don't, it becomes very tough for them. When I talk about 2025 and 2026, I think the first thing that I think of is I think Red Bull needs to start thinking about being a bit less Max Verstappen dependent. Because I think I've seen this movie play with Honda in MotoGP. The entire team was around Marc Marquez, and once the team stopped winning and Marquez left, it took them 3 or 4 years to become at least semi-respectable. Red Bull, again, Bernie Collins was a bit, you can say, hyperbolic when she said that without Max, the team would be 10th fastest. But the reality is, if Max leaves today, there's no premium talent that is actually waiting to jump into that car.
The biggest problem they have is just that there's no one that I can think of that they could get like for 2026 that could drive a car that like if they've developed the 2026 car, for example, in a similar way where it's really oversteering at the front end, there's just no one I can think of that could handle that they could jump in straight away. Like, I mean,
exactly.
There's Leclerc and there's a couple of other drivers who could handle it, but I don't think they would jump into that position for 2026.
Yeah.
Like with all of the unknowns.
Exactly. And that's the worry bit, because they have to. And I think this is where I think they also need to take a look at who the second driver is going to be. I think Yuki Tsunoda is fine for this season. They'll keep him for this season. But I think they have to get as aggressive as possible and maybe chat to Charles Leclerc.
Yeah.
He would be at an all-time low after the nonsense in China, to be honest.
Yeah.
Chat to him, chat to George Russell, maybe talk to an Oscar Piastri or Lando Norris. Talk to them as much as you can. Maybe talk to Ollie Beerman. Give the kid a chance. They have to, at this moment, if Red Bull takes a step back, I think it is going to hurt them a lot because they are going to let things play out. And how things play out is they slowly just peter out in this year's championship, and after first couple of races in 2026, Max announces that he's leaving the team for either Mercedes or Aston Martin, and that
or
would be
Ferrari,
or Ferrari, either team, anything else. I mean, if he's completely at some point the impact of Josh beating up Max, it's going to play out. So yeah.
The thing is, he'll probably leave for Racing Bulls because that's a faster car.
Yeah, I mean, he'll lap the entire field.
I've heard at least 4 people say they should bring Jody Egginton in to replace Pierre Vacher. And
I'm just surprised that they know who Jody Egginton is.
My response to that is simply, do you watch F1? Like, have you... Jody Egginton. Yeah, if you want a car that's P5 every race at most, I mean, that's on a fucking amazing weekend for Jody Egginton.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, I think this is the point where ideally, look, there are 2 things that could happen. Red Bull could just try and screech and claw and stay at the top, and then ultimately when Max leaves, they realize that they are in deep shit. Something that happened with McLaren in 2018 when Alonso left, and they realize that they are in deep shit. I hope they don't. I hope they are more proactive and understand that you cannot build an entire team around one driver who at this stage seems very fickle in terms of his commitment to the team. Maybe it's about time you put 2 elite talents in the same car and let's see where it goes. So, yeah.
Yeah, I just think they what was it? After Ricciardo and Verstappen, they seem very against doing that, right? And even after Webber and Vettel, it was very much like, we don't really want to do that anymore. Because, for those of you who weren't watching the time, Webber was a very capable driver. It's just that Seb was like Verstappen now or Hamilton now or whatever, and as much as people like to do revisionist history where they're like, oh, he was never that good. It's like, yes, he was. He was very, very good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the one thing they need to do, and I guess this is the next question, right, is they need to keep Horner. Like, that would be the absolute...
Exactly.
That would be the worst thing they could possibly do, is to lose Horner. Because for good and for bad, there's no situation in Formula One history that I can think of where the team boss, the guy who built the team up, has left and the team has come back together in anything less than a decade. I'm trying to think of one and I can't think of any.
I can tell one right now.
Is it Flavio? But no, actually, that never came back. I'm kidding. Yeah.
McLaren.
Is it less than a decade?
Yeah.
No.
Zach Brown.
Mm-hmm.
Zach Brown took over in 2017. He won the championship in 2025.
When did Ron Dennis leave? It was 2015.
2016 end.
That's basically a decade, isn't it? Like,
yeah.
We're pulling hairs here.
Exactly. The point is that, again, by the way, Ron by that time was just done. I mean, his F1 sense was on the wane. The kind of calls that he'd made, he still was of the approach that the power unit the power unit partner, it had to be more. He had to crack the whip to keep them in control, which doesn't work, which Red Bull proved afterwards. Again, he was anachronistic at the time, out of the time, and you have to understand when it comes to these people. Horner is the second youngest team principal on the entire grid. Sorry,
I'm just gonna turn my light down slightly because it's burning my eye. But yeah, continue. Sure. Sorry.
Yeah, he's the third youngest. Jeez, your light or the...
I'm still here. I just switched the camera for a sec so I can do this. Give me a sec.
Okay. Go ahead.
No, you can keep talking.
Okay. I lost my chain of thought. Okay, yeah. So basically, Horner is still the third youngest team principal in F1 right now, which is basically after Ollie Oaks and James Walls. So you know where he's not out of it. And you have to understand, in Formula 1, you will not win every year. You will not win for 4 to 5 years regularly as well. But what you can do is you can continue to have best practices in place. I still don't think that Red Bull has fallen off on that front. I do think we might see a point where maybe they take a couple of years in the midfield or so before they rebuild and get back to the top.
Yeah. I think that's what they need to do. Is just the problem is going to be, though, isn't it, that like Red Bull is very much controlled by a board now, and as we both know, boards are very quick to just drop things.
Yeah.
And this is my concern, is that like as long as they're winning, there's no justification to remove Horner. But as soon as Max leaves and Red Bull is dropped to like P5 or something in the championship, the reaction will be Horner needs to go. We need fresh blood, and that will just be the wrong idea. What you need in that situation is someone to go, okay, guys, we've just been punched in the face. Let's regroup and the only person who knows the place inside out that's left is Horner. And the biggest thing they need to do, to be honest, if anyone needs to be fired right now, it's Helmut Marko. And he needs to go.
I knew this was coming.
But he needs to go. The only reason he's still there is because Verstappen said if he goes, I go, basically. That's it.
Yeah, that is it.
And unfortunately, Horner's not in a position where if they had the 2023 car this season, like you could fire Marko, and if Verstappen said, if he goes, I go, I'd be like, cool, go. We've got the fastest car by 7/10. Like I can replace you with anyone. But unfortunately, he's not in that position at the minute,
Agreed.
But yeah,
I actually did an article today, which was the 3 red flags that Red Bull is showing right now.
Mm-hmm.
The first of them was the way that everything is now being run by the board. I've followed Red Bull for 20 years. I've never heard the word board used at any point. This is the first time it is happening.
It's because Dietrich wanted it completely separated. Yeah. Which is what annoyed me about Helmut last year, because Helmut went and sided with the board and pushed for like the board to control the racing team.
Yeah.
And my thought on that was this, like Dietrich had openly said like he never wants the board to control the racing team. Like the racing team should be separate. So it was like Helmut, who was so like integral to, to Dietrich and the whole plan, all of a sudden was like, right, I care more about my power now than the team.
Yeah.
And, he just needs to
It's
go.
so
He's
obvious,
useless.
isn't it? Right now, it's so obvious that it is entirely about him watching his back instead of controlling everything.
Yeah. And he's, as I've said, as useful as a magic 8-ball. Like I said this in a recent video, which was, if you had have just taken anybody, taken a magic 8-ball and had them go watch F3 and F4 and said, like, shake it in front of every driver and it says yes, no, come back later, they would have had more success than Helmut has had in the past 10 years.
Yeah.
I stand by
100%.
that.
I mean,
Yeah.
no, there's no... My
He's been
worry is
useless.
my worry is that, first of all, the board. Secondly, the number of leaks. The news of Liam Lawson being replaced was announced 2 days before it became official, which is just pathetic,
And that,
honestly.
from my understanding of Red Bull, that is not coming from Milton Keynes and Horner. Because that place is like very, like, they all are very kind of Horner-centric in Milton Keynes, from what I've heard.
Jos Verstappen has made Eric Van Haren's career,
Yeah.
the Telegraph guy.
Yeah.
And there is literally... It could not be more blatantly obvious what the fuck is going on there. It's basically
That's true,
Jos.
actually. Yeah. All the leaks are coming from him.
Yeah.
And it happens to be, that's Dutch, right? Happens to be a Dutch guy. Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
he's very close. And yeah, that's why do you think I mentioned it?
Was it Occam's razor, right? The simplest.
No,
it's not
I know.
Occam's. But what's the saying?
Occam's razor. Occam's
is it
razor,
like
the simplest explanation is the right one.
Yeah.
So, but it's not even the simplest. I know where it is coming from, because he is very close to the Verstappen family and he's used that access for, again, it's against Red Bull's interest that all this thing is going on. He's doing his job. He's built his sources and he's making the most of it.
No bashing on
entirely
him. That's what his job is to do. Yeah,
it's his job, and he's made his career by basically, you can say, finding the right dummy.
The problem is Verstappen that just like, and as in Jos Verstappen, him doing that just doesn't make any sense at all. Because like the whole thing is, if Max wants to leave, he can leave, right? So if you want to get Max to leave, then he can leave. So what's your plan? Your plan in the interim is to destroy the team so he leaves? Like, why would you do it? Just doesn't make any sense. Why would you not sit back, push the team to perform better, and if they don't, we leave? Like, you don't actively destroy the team so you can leave when you could just leave anyway,
isn't it? Yeah. It's just you and this is Ferrari level bullshit, honestly.
Yeah.
If things are coming out 2 days prior to their official, and even Ferrari didn't give 2 days, right? The Lewis Hamilton announcement was done by the evening. And here they've gone. This should not be happening, and it just shows that Horner does not have the kind of control that he ideally should.
Well, this is what I'm saying, though. I think he does of Milton Keynes. The problem is that Helmut, Jos, and the board are clearly like, I think, maybe, I'm not sure if Mintzlaff has come to terms with it, but it does seem like the board want more control. And I don't know, like, I mean, everything, if anyone is kind of anti-Horner and pro-board, just think about the fact that all of the decisions that the board, Helmut Marko and Jos Verstappen, for example, like all of the decisions they've made in the last 18 months have all been a horrible failure. Like the past 2 years even. Like they were like Nick de Vries trying to make the junior team a senior team was the the junior team a sister team was the active idea of the board for the past like 4 years. And all it's meant is that there is now no one to basically replace Checo. And then everyone goes, oh, well, it's Horner's fault because there's like, he brought Checo in. And you're like, no, he brought Checo in because Helmut Marko and the board weren't doing their job. There was no one else to bring in. So like, it's just, I don't know. I don't get it. And the only reason I can think that Jos and Helmut and so on tried to kind of burn those things is they thought, well, we can get Horner out and then we have all the say. And it's actively been a problem. That would have
been the initial thing, right? But why he's doing it right now, it's a bit worrying.
Because I think Jos Verstappen is a horribly sore loser. And he cares more about him winning than his son winning. Simple as that. I don't know.
I mean, I think in the long term, he thinks that maybe Max moving to Mercedes probably is the right thing. Maybe it is. Who knows? But the way it is going on, I think it should
But
not.
that's,
I
that's
think that
what I
leak
don't
was
get
to
is that's such
worry.
an easy move, though. Like, all of
Max
this
is
bullshit.
not convinced, right?
No, and of course, and that's my point. Like, Jos Verstappen cares more about himself than Max. Like, that's the only, because at the end of the day, like, if Max was in agreement and Max thought, okay, well, this ship is sinking and I want to get out of here,
Yeah.
it would take 2 phone calls and he'd be gone. Like, it wouldn't, like, if he said, oh, Toda, you need to pay 50 million to buy me out of the contract, Toda would get that money in 5 minutes. It'd be done.
Yeah.
And,
Won't be
that's
a big
all
deal.
it is. Yeah. So, like, Yoss's attitude essentially tells you that Yoss is right now is pissed off that he didn't win something last year and cares more about that than he cares about actually helping his son's career. Like, a big, and to be honest, am I surprised by that? No, because that's who Yoss is. Like, even going back over the years, like to the history of his time in Formula One, that's just who Yoss is. He's a prick. He's a loser.
Yeah.
I've said it.
And for me, the third reason was that overt dependence on one driver, the team being entirely, it has never worked in Formula One. I can give far too many examples where, other than the Michael Schumacher thing, where it worked, where everything was for him. Other than that,
I disagree. I think
just
it
look at
works.
Mercedes. Just look at Mercedes right now. Mercedes, they were entirely, everything was pro Lewis Hamilton.
But it works until it doesn't, right?
Exactly, it works until it doesn't. And right now, it has worked for now until for 4 or 5 years.
Well,
but now
like,
we are
I
reaching
think
a point where
it
Yeah, go
works
for it.
when you're. It works when you're the fastest car, and when you're not, it doesn't.
yeah,
Like, it's a simple, because, like, realistically, this year and last year, if McLaren, for example, still had Daniel Ricciardo, but Daniel Ricciardo not in his, like, ultimate form. I mean, Daniel Ricciardo in that kind of broken, I can't go on. If that happened last year, I think there is points you could argue that Lando would have had a better chance at winning that title, for example. But they wouldn't have won the constructors, more than likely. So I think when it comes to the constructors, you're right. But when
they would have. Ferrari finds a way to fuck things up.
yeah, that's true. But, like, so I do think it works. I just think the problem with that situation is it either works spectacularly well or fails spectacularly well.
Yeah.
It's just, it doesn't go, there's no
The
middle
biggest
ground for
example
that.
is here Toto being very pro Lewis until the last day, until Lewis one day came up to him and said, I'm leaving. Mm-hmm. Right. And I won't be surprised that that's how Max kind of leaves Red Bull as well.
Yeah.
And the problem is when Vettel left, Red Bull had an insurance in place in Daniel Ricciardo, and luckily Max came a couple of years later.
I guess they kind of,
Red Bull doesn't have anyone,
but
right?
Red Bull got kind of lucky with Daniel Ricciardo, I think, as well.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, that was after his first season in the team. So it wasn't like he had a lot of time to build. So, like, that could have gone another way. Like, if they had for example, like, if that had been
Weber.
that season, well, Weber maybe a little bit better. Like, I know he was a bit kind of fed up by them probably, but, like, if they had like, say, like, just randomly off the top of my head, a Kvyat sitting in the other car, like, they probably would have been screwed, But yeah, like, I think Mercedes, for example, not got lucky, but they were prepared in that they had George. And even though I think the way George has been treated, we've talked about this a lot, like, hasn't been up to what I would
I'm
think.
just happy George is finally getting the credit he deserves.
Yeah. Finally. But, like, that was because they said they wanted to start preparing the next Lewis. You know, that is something that Red Bull needed to start doing last year. But I think unlike Mercedes, they haven't had anyone to do that, and that is why I think all of their problems right now, as far as I'm concerned, lay on Helmut Marko. Marko should have stepped aside and got, like, he hasn't been doing his job. And at the end of the day,
he's been a disruptor, honestly. Last year or so, what he's done is be a pain in the ass.
like, imagine the conversation we would be having right now, right? If all of this was happening, but, like, Oscar Piastri or Kimi Antonelli or someone like that was in the other seat, you'd say, right, well, they have short-term pain, but they have a plan. They have someone else they can lean on. That's the biggest problem they have right now, is that things are going to get difficult, I think, next year, and they don't have anyone to back them up.
Let's talk about it then. Max Verstappen, do you think he moves? And if he does, where?
Well, we know what Jos thinks. He'd go to Mercedes. But I don't know, like, because Max Verstappen, like, he seems relatively pragmatic. Because realistically, like, if Max wanted to leave, he probably, if Max was anything like his father in that way, he would have gone he would have left last year, you know, and he would have been in a Mercedes right now alongside Kimi Antonelli, because Toto just doesn't give any credit to George until recently.
The sad reality is it's actually true.
Yeah. So look, I think if he's going anywhere, he goes to Mercedes, and I think there's a part of that is why George's contract hasn't been renewed yet. I think he wants to see what happens here.
Yeah.
Which I think is unfortunate, because again, I think I want to see George fight Max in the same car. That would be interesting. Does he leave at the end of this year? I don't know. And I think it's a wrong decision. I think if anything, Max maybe pushes back against his father on that decision and says, no, I'll wait until 2026. Let's wait until 3 or 4 races in, because look at the change of McLaren. Look at where Ferrari are now. Like, look at the teams in the back that are changing over. Like, we know Audi's not going to be anywhere, but we've got so much change in 2026. Maybe that all could be cancelled. But yeah, we've got so much change potentially for 2026. Surely he knows that things can completely swing. And that, like, if you were, my point is, if you were in 2021 and you said, I need to go somewhere to win next year, and a seat opened up, was available at any team, you would have gone for Mercedes, right? And that would have been a horrible 100%. Decision. You would have won like 4 races, you know? So you wait. If you're Max Verstappen, everyone now knows how good you are. So every single seat will be available to you for 2027. So you just wait, you know?
Ideally, yeah. And a lot of people have said that by the end of the season, Max is gone. I think it's least likely. But, you know, I also I'd also predicted that Yuki Tsunoda would never drive for Red Bull. Yeah. But I think it's least likely because, first of all, Max is someone who tends not to take gambles when it comes to big long-term decisions.
Yeah.
Right now, whichever team he picks for 2026, as you said, it will be a gamble. Because, there are reports that Mercedes engine is great. Maybe. But is the car good?
They could fuck up the aero
for the last 4 years.
Yeah.
The proof is in the pudding. We don't
like
really know that.
Imagine if he leaves right now, right? Imagine if he decides, I'm going to Mercedes right now.
Yeah.
And Red Bull get their powertrain not as good as Mercedes, but they get their aero better. Yeah. And he is suddenly in a Mercedes looking at a Red Bull beating him. Like, I mean, like that, it sounds ridiculous, but then again, like I said,
it's possible. You cannot predict anything.
But then, like I said,
remember 2021.
Mercedes, you would have predicted them.
Even by the end of the season, there was a sense that and I think everyone knew that Red Bull had kind of delayed their development for the next year's regulation because they're focusing on winning.
Which meant we all said Red Bull would be screwed in 2022.
Yeah. The first impression was, and by the way, Adrian Newey kind of said that our car was heavy because what we tried to do was get the basics right and then focus on making development throughout the season.
Yeah.
It's just that everyone else fucked things up a bit like on a larger scale.
From Newey talking about it sounded like another 2009 where they had the basics right, but they needed to develop, which is why Braun won. So, like if...
It has to be... Yeah. I honestly think if I'm Max, I'll calm the fuck down. The situation is not as dire as it seems right now. He's just 8 points behind, and you have to understand that. Because every time he talks, he talks like the Red Bull is the slowest car in Formula 1, and maybe he's right, but he's probably not. Because if you're getting the car to that particular level, the car I think capable of being on that level.
I think as well, to be fair, like, you know, the way he says things as well, like, sure, he talks about them a bit like that, but it's just high expectations. And then the problem is everyone repeats it and exaggerates it, so it sounds worse than it actually is, you know? But yeah, the biggest example of not knowing what's going on, like, if at the start of 2024 you had said that McLaren would win the constructors, we all would have laughed. Yeah. So, this is why I think anyone who says, he needs to go to Mercedes for 2026, I think it's like, well, just back off. Like, every time there's a regulation change, you have no idea. Like, in 2013, if you had said next year Mercedes would be the absolute dominant force.
I predicted that.
A few of us would have said maybe. Yeah. I wouldn't have said definitely. But I did not
expect the other teams to be this far behind, honestly.
Yes, that's my point.
The power didn't fuck up is something
I would have said Mercedes will be fighting for a title next year. I wouldn't have said they would be a second ahead on every lap.
Yeah.
Like, no way.
That was soul crunching. In
2008, if you had told me Braun will, Honda will win the championship in 2009, be like, what are you talking about? So the point is, like, Max is in a position where Max right now is in the Vettel position, the Schumacher position, the Alonso, the Hamilton position of he can go anywhere he wants. To be honest, if he really doesn't want to drive for Red Bull next year, the best choice he could make is to say, I'm taking a year out. Yeah.
Rather do that. Yeah. If you don't want to drive, then just take the year off.
But I think he will probably turn around and say, look, I'll stay for next year. He's already got the contract. He's got performance clauses. He can leave whenever he wants. And I think by sticking around and making it out that way, it will mean that the other teams will go, let's not sign any long-term contracts because we need to open a space for Max for 2027. Every team will think like that,
And the thing is, every team's contract expires at the end of 2026.
Yes, exactly. So I don't think there's any point in him taking a gamble. Unfortunately, if he does listen to his father, he'll be driving a Mercedes next year, which will either work out or it won't.
Yeah. Mercedes next season, Kimi Antonelli might be a bit more experienced and the kid is fast. Do you want a scenario of Alonso versus Hamilton, McLaren 2007? Do you want that in your... Yeah.
You know what the annoying thing will be as well? That it will also... The people who will back this and the people who love Jos Verstappen, if it works out, will say like, Jos was a genius all along. You're like, well, no, like he flipped a coin and it worked out. Like that's literally all he's done. Like it's not like he was able to see the future. It's just that he went.
It might or it might not. I do think if there's a team that Max should go to, it's Aston Martin. It might not come good. Again, if he's making a gamble, if he's like too desperate and he wants to leave Red Bull, if he's reached a point. Look, every driver reaches a breaking point. It can happen. He's been in the same system for 11 years. But if he has to make a gamble, I'd say go to Aston Martin because, look, the ingredients are there. There could not be a better ingredient available on the entire grid than Aston Martin. Every box is ticked.
I just think he shouldn't move, though, until the end of 2026. It's the smartest move. Like, worst...
He can be impulsive as well.
Worst case, he loses one. Well, he can be. The other thing is he can kind of afford to go either way. Like he's already a 4-time champion. He could well be a 5-time champion by the end of the season because stranger things have happened and he's not that far off as
it's not. I don't think it's strange. I think it's very realistic. I think even right now, if you ask me who is the favorite for the World Championship, I'd say Max Verstappen. Max. Yeah. I will not. I don't think I can pick either Lando or an Oscar over him at this stage. The reason being, he's just 8 points behind when the car was dog shit in the first 2 races.
100%,
Yeah, you just cannot. First of all, he needs to wake up. He needs to understand that the championship is still on and he needs to have that mindset. Stop mourning about the car. Focus about the fact that in China, you were outscored by 1 point. That's it. Keep that in mind. Keep running through that. Yeah. And who knows? Yeah. But anyways, enough of Red Bull chit chat. We've been doing it a lot, isn't it?
Well, it is the most interesting part of this weekend.
Yeah. By the way, amongst all of this, by the way, I think the person that is the happiest right now is Fred Visser because all the heat is taken off him for the kind of dog shit job that he's done this season until now.
Oh God, I don't. Oh God, like this is the worst. Is this the worst start since 2020?
2020 was brilliant, by the way.
For Ferrari.
Leclerc started with a P2 in the very first race.
Oh yeah, but their season in 2020 was shit, right? Their whole
Yeah, it
season.
was
They
shit.
finished
But
sixth in the
Leclerc had.
constructors
Yeah, but look, that was because I think
because they
Sid had.
cheated. Simple.
Yeah, that's true.
Like
That's the
if
simplest
we're
way of
gonna go
putting
the actual,
Yeah.
they cheated, they got caught, they had to pay for it. Yeah,
Yeah,
So,
that's
yeah,
exactly what happened.
Yeah.
Yeah, but Leclerc had a brilliant season. I think he had multiple podiums and stuff. So
Yes, he did. I just couldn't remember if was it the start of the season they did it decently.
the reality is, this is worse than 2020. That's the reality, and that should actually sting. Because
yeah.
what the fuck is going on here?
They're behind Williams in the championship.
I think they're also no. At least in
No, just
the other
Williams
standings,
at the
they are
moment,
behind.
Yeah.
Yeah. For Ferrari, I think the biggest reason that. By the way, why are people not outraged at where Ferrari is right now? I'm not entirely
Because
sure.
Lewis Hamilton won a sprint, and that apparently is really important now.
Because wasn't this team supposed to fight for the title this season?
Yeah. This was their year to win the title, yeah. But their year is
Yeah.
now 2026. But their year has also been here since 2008, right? It's been their year every season since 2008.
It's just
A board can't run an F1 team. I cannot stress this enough.
I don't think this is on the board either.
No,
'cause
it's
Fred Visser. He specifically said that we are changing 99% of the car. Look, if you're doing that big a change, then that's a bit of a.
But it's also just it's just ridiculous errors. Like, I mean, like, okay, their performance on track at the first two races was shit enough, but then to also get disqualified, like both cars disqualified for different reasons. And in reality, also, I do think that on top of the weight problem for Leclerc, I think if Leclerc's front wing hadn't have been broken, he probably would have had the same disqualification as Lewis. Like, I think his skid plank would have been worn. And I think the only reason his skid plank wasn't worn is because he lost like 20, 30 points at downforce. Yeah. So, which makes sense, you know? I don't know. Like, these are just ridiculous errors. And then how do you go? Like, if Lewis was running like in P3 or P4 throughout the race and then got destroyed because of the skid plank, I would almost kind of forgive it as like, okay, well, you know, it's a sprint weekend. I know it's a rookie error, but we've seen this in the past, even by teams that are operationally sound, like Mercedes in Austin in 2023, right? But then, like, to go from the sprint where he was winning, and not even like winning, not even winning close.
He won by 7 seconds, I think.
Yeah, like, he was comfortably winning that race. To go from that to being like, what, P10 in the race then? Somebody on P9? P6 was it? But like way off. They were just nowhere the whole way through the race. Like, how do you do that? How do you make both mistakes? How do you make your car slower and yet still wear the plank out? Like, how do you do that?
It's okay. Just to correct you, it's skid block.
Skid block, sorry. Yeah. It's the plank.
Yeah.
Right?
It's called skid block because that's the one that, you know, it should not be worn out beyond a certain point.
Yeah. But it's the plank underneath, right? So.
Yeah. Ultimately, the reason that they said why the whole thing happened was they had to tune the car out for the race. In terms of, it was probably a bit more aggressive on the tires. Since he was running up front, it didn't really show.
Yeah.
The reality is, again, Ferrari was quick. Leclerc with the broken wing and losing 20-30 points of downforce. He was still, if the track was a bit more suitable for overtaking, he could have jumped George by the way he was attacking him in the second stint. The worry is that if you're not maximizing everything after this is the third year under the Visser management, then where are the areas where you've improved? If a Ferrari is still fucking up in strategies after 2.5 years of you being there, then what's your meaningful contribution to the whole thing?
I'm just not sure what you do here, because like replacing Fred Vasseur in my mind just doesn't seem like the right option.
No, I'm not saying replace him, but I think he needs to be accountable. Honestly, if I'm the head of Ferrari, Vasseur stays for at least 4 or 5 years. He's not going anywhere.
Yeah, because changing your team principal every 3 seasons is basically what Ferrari has done since since 2014.
Look at the beautiful record that they have.
Yeah. So, it's worked out real well. I'm just not sure what they do here because, like, it's only race 2, so they can't just give up on the championship yet. But they, out of all of...
Yeah, go for it.
I was just going to say, like, out of all the top 4 teams, they are the ones now who, after 5 or 6 races, could be the first to go, right, well, we have to now focus on next season because we're so far behind. Like,
I think they won't be in that position. The reason behind it is in the next couple of races, there will be one where they'll either have a podium or something or a strong result. And then ideally they should have a good result in Suzuka as well, because the car tends to work well there. But the problem with them is, if a team has to win the championship, you have to focus on things like strategy, and they are still making the same mistakes again and again.
But it's all the little things, and if you want to focus on a title, you cannot be having skid wear getting you disqualified, having a car underweight getting you disqualified.
Jesus,
both cars for different reasons in the same race getting disqualified. Like that can't happen. And like the thing is, it's like you said, it's one of these things where when that happens to Mercedes over the last couple of years, it's very much a whoa, that's really out of character. The problem is when it's happening for Ferrari, it's not out of character.
It's funny.
Yeah, because we expect it. It's just, this is why, like we've talked about this. This is why we laugh so much. This is why you do the intro at the start a couple of times now about Ferrari. It's not insulting.
Probably will do it a few times this season.
It's not that it's like going, haha, Lewis. It's going, this is what we expected. Yeah. Like everyone bashed Mercedes last year going, I can't wait for him to go to a serious team. And so what serious team is he going to? Like, what are you talking about? You know, like, I don't expect anything from Ferrari now going forward, except that I expect that Lewis and Leclerc will have some interesting highlights along the way. But I don't expect them to fight for a title.
And that has been Leclerc's career, isn't it? A few highlights during the season, a few shitty races where he's on slicks on a wet track, and that's it. That's basically
Leclerc's
been his career.
the unfortunate one where you could say to yourself that if he was in he would absolutely, like, it's just unfortunate look for him that he's just in that team.
I'm done with the sympathy for Leclerc either. He is the one who keeps signing this contract.
Yeah,
it's basically masochistic stupidity that he keeps basically inflicting pain upon himself and thinking that maybe things might fall in place. Look, it's Ferrari. It doesn't fall in place. It doesn't get better.
Yeah.
And I mean, someone seriously needs to sit down and actually tell him that.
It is the him going, well, Red Bull have jumped up here, so we can do that as well. Ferrari can do that as well. Oh, look, McLaren have jumped up here, so we can do that as well. It's like, no, Leclerc, no, you can't.
Yeah. Exactly.
You're at Ferrari.
You are at Ferrari.
You're in the team that everyone wants to go to.
Yeah.
For some bizarre reason.
Yeah. Money and pasta and maybe the Tifosi fans.
I think the free Ferrari cars. I think that's it, right?
Yeah, so, could be
for the Poontang. Yeah, that's it.
2026. If the car sucks, Lewis's contract is up. Leclerc's contract is up. I think Lewis would probably stay, but I think Leclerc moves. He will not stay beyond that.
Put something on the table here. The problem is that the problem Leclerc is going to find himself in now, I think, is that if 2026 happens where the Ferrari is shit, right? Like, it depends on who the competition is, but like, for example, if the Ferrari is shit and it's Aston that are dominating, right? For example, and Fernando Alonso is still in that car. One, Fernando is going to kill anyone who tries to take his seat, first of all. But secondly, if you're Aston Martin in that position and they're dominating, we both know there's going to be a couple of drivers coming to want to be in that seat.
Max.
And it's going to be Max and Leclerc, and you're going to just pick Max because Max already has the titles. Like, there is no proof needed. Whereas with Leclerc, as much as we all know how good Leclerc is, there's still some proof needed there. Like, can he win a title? And then if it's Mercedes that are dominating, again, I think George finally gets the appreciation he deserves, because George will win a title in the fastest car if that happens. I have no doubt about that. And then if you're Toto, do you say, right, do we pay out big bucks to get Leclerc in when George has just delivered for us? No.
Yep.
If Max comes along, maybe you think about it. But if it's George, you don't. Or sorry, if it's Lewis, you don't. Or Leclerc, you don't. Sorry, you don't. Even. So Leclerc's going to find himself with nowhere to go. And if McLaren wins, sure, but that's only if Red Bull's not dominating, and then you're going from one bad team to one in turmoil.
Yeah, but with Red Bull, it's led by Christian Horner. And it is a team that could actually. I get that. It could one day work.
Sure, yeah.
Ferrari's never.
But But my point is, you're switching one someday for another someday.
But you're leaving a no day.
There's
no day with Ferrari. It's never happening.
Watch this turn on us now, and all of a sudden they start winning every race for the rest of the season or something. But
who are we kidding here?
If that happens, I'd just like to point out, if that happens, I'll be happy. I have waited a long time to see Ferrari win again.
17 years.
I won't be complaining. Like, I will not be. The last time they won a championship, well, the Drivers' Championship, I was delighted to see Kimi Räikkönen up there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, so my nephew asked, why is Ferrari so shit? So I had literally told him, I said, I have 2 gray hair here on this side. And they are basically because I cheered for Sebastian Vettel from 2015 till 2020. That is the entire reason. It's not aging. It's this fucking reason.
These are my Ferrari hairs. Yeah.
Yeah. These are because of that.
It just pains me that it's so expected. And last year in the podcast, we talked about it so often. We were just like, these people who are cheering for Lewis going to Ferrari are going to get a real shock next year. Yeah. And when the sprint win happened, I thought to myself, was I wrong for a second? And then it was literally 12 hours later. No, I wasn't. Never mind.
Not 12 hours. 3 or 4 hours when we had qualifying. I knew by then. Look, I had an indication that, okay, let's wait for the weekend to unravel. And when it did, I wasn't even surprised, because that's Ferrari.
Yeah.
And you can't even put it on Lewis. Honestly, he's doing his best. He's adapting to the car. Everything is perfect.
We've said this. He's doing better than I thought he would be doing.
Yeah.
Credit. Brilliant.
Exactly.
Unfortunately, he's doing better at Ferrari. Which
is basically no point.
Yeah. Well, he'll have I guarantee he'll have a few beautiful, like, they'll win at Monza or Imola or something, and he'll have this highlight of the year. Yeah. But yeah, he will not win an 8th title with Ferrari. I am convinced of that.
Yeah. Now I don't think even Leclerc wins his first. I think this season was the best possible chance when the regulations were basically stable, and they fucked it up during a stable regulation period. So yeah, let's see.
I just really wish Vettel had have gone to Mercedes for 2017, but sure, look, here we are.
Oh yeah, even I
they
think
wouldn't
about
have fired him though. By 2017, they had Lewis. He didn't want 2 number ones, so.
Where? Mercedes?
Yeah.
After Vettel had a contract.
No, I mean 2017.
Yeah, Vettel had a contract. Vettel talked with Lauda and Toto in 2017. In 2016 to move. But he stayed beyond that. Because Rosberg's contract was also ending or something at the end of 2016.
You're right. I completely forgot about this whole talking point. Yeah.
So
my bad.
I think only recently Vettel revealed that he had a contract and even talked with Mercedes for a possible
I
move
remember
in
there was conversations, but Vettel finally confirmed it, did he?
Yeah. So he did. He said that he didn't really want to. He wanted to pursue the Ferrari dream. Pursue it, you idiot. Ended up being completely bald and turning into loving bees and becoming an environmentalist. I mean, Ferrari does weird things to people.
Yeah. But I think the Ferrari, I just don't, unless they're dominating 20s. The thing is, I just don't even have any faith. Like 2022, remember, it was like the start of the season, Leclerc was leading the championship, and it was talk of Max basically saying, I'm not overturning this lead.
Yeah.
Like,
just took them 2 races. Literally took him 2 races too. And you know what happened? After the first 3 races, Leclerc, I wouldn't say dominated. He won the race in Bahrain. The race in Jeddah was basically touch and go in the end. Max won it. The third
Bahrain
race
was just due to the Red Bull's breaking down as well, basically.
No.
Right?
Leclerc had jumped him. Leclerc was leading the race.
Yeah,
already.
but before that, there was already like he was on the radio talking about issues. Remember?
Yeah.
So
Something on those lines. Second race, Verstappen wins. Third race, Leclerc dominates, and Verstappen again has a DNF. So basically, after the first three races, there were two DNFs for Max and a win, while Leclerc had win, P2, and a win, which is basically what 50 plus 18.
Yeah.
That's 68 plus 2 bonus points. 70 points compared to what 25. That's a 46 point.
Yeah. It
gap.
was ridiculous. We all thought, right, Leclerc's winning this. Like, and it just fell apart. Like, genuinely, if Ferrari this season have 100-point lead going into Abu Dhabi for the final, I will still be saying on this podcast, let's wait until it ends.
Yeah.
Because I would not be
They'll
surprised if
find a way.
Leclerc wins the championship in Abu Dhabi, only to find out later on, oh, by the way, Ferrari have been disqualified from all races because they were running an illegal engine or something. Like, just I am not counting a Ferrari championship win until the fucking
happens.
trophy is handed at the events gala. Like
Yeah.
that,
Yeah.
for me
Not
is
until
yeah. Like, even if literally Abu Dhabi's over, Leclerc's the world champion, I'm still going to be on this podcast going, hold on,
Yeah.
I want to see the
Just
trophy
wait
at
for
the
it.
gala. When that's handed over,
Oh, God.
fine. Yeah, I have no faith
yeah.
in Ferrari.
Seriously, I mean, after last season, I had so many hopes that maybe
Here's a number 4 on a Ferrari, by the way, for anyone. Just, you know.
I can
That's
see it.
Lando next year after winning the championship this year,
Yeah.
going to Ferrari. Yeah.
Yeah,
Anyway,
to basically kill himself. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't think Lando can survive being in a Ferrari.
I think Lando could survive about 4 races at Ferrari and he'd be done.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'll sit home. Anyways, enough of Ferrari. Finally, a bit of a chatter about the world championship that could possibly be online. So we have Lando Norris on one side, we have Oscar Piastri on the other. Okay, now Oscar in the first couple of races he's shown one thing, which is that he's closed the gap in both
Qualifying,
the
yeah.
race and qualifying. How do you think the battle could unravel, and what's the role of McLaren in all of this? And are we being a bit too early to jump the gun as well?
I think it's a bit too early because I think that, I think clearly the car is a bit trickier than they expected, first of all. So I do think it's going to be like this ebb and flow for a couple of races while both drivers get on top of the car. And I do want to see 4 or 5 races in, does Lando all of a sudden just get back to kind of being dominant in qualifying once again? Because realistically, China, Lando had one of his signature off weekends, right? In reality. And even in a signature off weekend, he was still pretty strong. And if it wasn't for that brake issue, I know the big if thing that people love about Lando, which, by the way, I was going to say, people were talking about the Australia Grand Prix going, if Oscar hadn't have, yeah, we can do if about everyone, guys. The point is, if it wasn't for that brake issue, right, realistically, he was catching Oscar, and I think he would have gone for Oscar. So I don't think he would have passed him, but I think he had a chance to.
I don't think McLaren would have allowed it. I think the problem is not Lando. I think McLaren was stage managing a lot.
My point is more that on what we're calling an off weekend what I'm calling an off weekend for Lando, he was still right there. And I think that Oscar is going to need to extract a little bit more performance to beat Lando this year. Because I think we're going to see a very strong Lando this year. So I think it's Lando's to lose. And at the moment, I still think Lando's biggest risk is Max, not Piastri. But I agree. I think Piastri is a lot closer this season. I just want to see where that shakes out over 5 or 6 races, because I'm still not convinced he's made up 2 or 3 tenths on Lando, in such a short space of time. Maybe he's just more comfortable with the car than he was last year. And, I talked about that with George last year and Lewis, saying that if you're more comfortable with the car, it's easier to show that in qualifying than the race, for example. So, I don't know. What do you think? You think it's...
I think it's too early to call because it's only 2 races. But I also think that Saudi Arabian Grand Prix is one race where Oscar has had the edge over Lando in both occasions. So that is one race that he can bank. and when you have a race which you can reliably bank, it kind of plays on the mind of your rival. And that is third or fourth race from now. It's basically about
Imola though is the opposite. Like
but
Lando
Imola
even in a
is 7
shit
races.
car. But my point is, Lando even in a shit car has been like comfortably on the podium there constantly.
2021.
That's one I expect him to dominate, to be honest.
2020 as well. I think he was on the podium in 2020 as well, right?
Yeah, as far as I remember, yeah.
Was he or was Daniel Kvyat? I mean, fuck it. Yeah. You're checking?
Yeah.
Are you checking?
The Gran Premio de Emilia de Heineken de... Let me check it out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Emilia Romagna.
No, it was Daniel Ricciardo third in the Renault.
Yeah.
Yeah. Lando was eighth. Yeah. So it was 2021, right?
Yeah. He was.
But it was 2022 that I'm thinking of, where he was in a shit car and he still managed on the podium, I think.
He was. Yes, I think he was on the podium. Was he on the podium?
No, he qualified third, but the car dropped off. He finished fifth.
He did get a podium that season, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, he did. I'm just trying to think.
I think he got it in Imola only.
Yeah, no, he didn't get it in 2022. He qualified. He
got one podium in 2022, if I'm not wrong.
Yeah. I'm not sure where, though. But yeah, Lando finished second last year in Imola again. That was when they were chasing. Yeah, anyway, it doesn't matter. But yeah.
Anyways, coming back to this, I think there are two things that are actually very, very crucial. First will be the mental aspect. I think that is going to come into it. Second is how much McLaren meddles with the whole thing. What I mean by that is, if they end up stage managing races, then the first lap becomes more crucial than in general. And then that's when we're going to see a few
plays into Oscar's hand as well, yeah.
Not necessarily, because at that point you'll see both drivers just making some lunges and some very aggressive moves on the
and
very
also
first
Lando
lap.
has been a little bit better off the starts. Well,
From now on,
race.
in the last few races, yeah. And that is, that could lead to a double DNF and stuff, and that could actually raise tensions between the drivers. So that's something
they can't
that
afford to do that this season, because I think it's going to be closer than expected, as we've talked about.
Exactly. And that's why, McLaren stage managing is something that's both Oscar and Lando would be thinking about, the fact that they've been told to watch their pace in one of the races. In Australia, it was Oscar who was told, and in China, it was Lando who was managing. When you have that kind of thing, you always think, okay, if I'm at the front at the start of the race on the first lap, then all these conversations are out of the picture.
Yeah.
And they will be thinking on those lines as well. So when we are in Suzuka and if there's a front row lockout, keep an eye, because either of them they are not going to lift into T1, and we are going to see a bit more aggression.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a title on the line for both of them, and I think they
realize it now.
I think also both of them have probably prepared themselves coming into this season that this is potentially their only season to win a title. Yeah. Because going into 2026, you would say that McLaren is not one of those teams that you would expect to be kind of dominating 2026. In fairness, they could, because it's like, they've got the right team now to do it. So I don't think they'll be like at the back or anything, but they're not an engine manufacturer. So you would expect them to start a bit slower than everyone else. Than the guys who have engines to start with, yeah.
Yeah, 100%.
I don't think that'll be the case, actually, but yeah, that's what you would expect.
I do think that would be the case. Primarily, I think McLaren would be close to the front, but I think they will always be at a disadvantage because they're not a works team.
Yeah.
Especially if Mercedes is fighting for the title.
Unless we carry these engines over.
That would be awesome.
Yeah. But it'll be with the new aero.
Make a complete mockery of the sport, is it?
Yeah. The FIA are doing that right now. They're actually talking about it right now. Did you hear? Sorry, I know it's a bit off topic, but did you hear one of the reasons the V10 talk was brought up is because literally Bernie Ecclestone called Christian Horner during a meeting. The race reported on this that And that's, if anyone else had said this, I'd be like, where did you hear this story? But when the race actually put it in an article and a video, I'm like, okay, as much as we can bash the race for certain things, they do check their sources.
No, they're very good.
Yeah, they're very good.
Probably there's
you
a
can bash them for certain opinions and so on, but when it comes to just facts, it's like, okay. Apparently there was an FOM meeting of all the teams to talk about the engines and so on, and they were discussing some of the issues with the 2026 engines, and Horner was on the phone to Bernie Eccleston during like a break or something while they were talking about it. And apparently Bernie started ranting in his ear about what he thinks they should do with the engines. And Horner put it on loudspeaker, and Bernie started saying to everyone, we should just do the V10s. You look at Vettel driving the V10 McLaren sustainable fuel. That is absolutely, like, if I was still running Formula One, that's what I'd be telling us to do right now. And apparently a lot of the guys were like, it's actually not the worst idea. And when Bernie's talking about it, they were like, well, I mean,
saves a lot of cost as well, by the way.
Yeah. So apparently, apparently that's something they're thinking about. And also, it's an interesting one that it's like they're actually considering just extending these regulations. And it seems that it's only like 2 of the manufacturers that are pushing back on it.
Okay, so
which is Audi, obviously.
Yeah, Audi is pushing back on it. Toto has more or less said that he's not in favor of it.
The way he said it is he's tried to be diplomatic on it and say, like, it's not that I'm against it, it's that we wouldn't have time to retool in order to supply Alpine and McLaren.
Yeah.
Oh,
a couple
Williams.
Of teams.
Yeah. I think Williams he left out because he's probably like, Vels, I got you. You know, we're good. But yeah, Alpine and McLaren, he was like, we wouldn't be able to supply.
Yeah. But he also is given another detailed interview where he said that the rivals who think they are behind on the development curve, they've actually insinuated it. Then he also talked about how,
which is Ferrari and Red Bull.
Seems like
Ferrari and Red. Well, the race said, according to their sources, it's Red Bull and Ferrari that are pushing for this. So those are the 2 teams.
Horner also said that this is not true. That we are not the ones who are pushing it. But again, he's supposed to say that.
Who knows, yeah. But the only ones I think who haven't given any inclination on how they feel about it is Honda. Honda are basically
Honda is the only one that is left,
I think Honda is basically in a position where they're kind of just like, let's see what everyone else wants to do, and then we'll back the winning team, essentially.
They were fine in the V10s, isn't it?
Yeah.
During the V10 era. Honda
Very
was
good.
fine.
Yeah. And also, like, the thing is, Honda knows, like, as much as they gave a lot of their IP to Red Bull when that whole switch happened, Honda knows how to build these engines.
Honda gave 0 IP, by the way.
Oh, did they not? That's what I had heard at the time.
0.
Oh, okay.
Absolutely 0.
So Honda still owns these engines. So if they carry over these engines for 2 years,
then they come in sealed, by the way. They come entirely sealed, and the Honda personnel, they handle everything.
Oh, okay.
RPPT is doing nothing.
So Honda, if they say we're carrying over these regulations, Honda's in a very good position because Aston Martin's in a fucking amazing position because basically they'll have the best engine from this regulation set for their car.
And they'll have Newey.
And Newey, yeah. Jesus,
on that front.
yeah. Right. So
but let's see what happens with that because it seems preposterous because there will be teams like Audi that will be left in the lurch. And that's not a good look. Well, but let's see how they go.
One of the interesting tidbits, again, spectacular reporting by the race to like the amount of details of people
John
they spoke
Noble,
to.
By the way,
yeah,
he's been a brilliant addition.
Yeah. He was like the only good thing left at Autosport, basically. Yeah, and now he's at the race, which is fantastic. But yeah, they were talking about the fact that apparently there's been some chatter behind the scenes that they're not quite worried about losing the manufacturers for the same reason that I have been saying, which is the manufacturers right now, like car sales are quite tough for everybody. And I keep saying, like, I feel like there's a recession coming at some point, and the like maybe there's not, but car sales seem to be kind of struggling. Unless
Trump literally pushes it onto the world, it's not coming.
Are you saying Trump would not do something crazy? Anyway,
it's not crazy,
this is not
by
that
the way, it helps the
no this is but my point is it is not exactly crazy to think Trump would do something ridiculous. So his point was that what they were saying is that there's been some chatter behind the scenes that by going to sustainable V10s You could also bring in some people who just want to manufacture engines for F1, like Cosworth in the past, for example, as well. So you could have like all these kind of engine manufacturers who would be up for just producing engines, but not having a team like we had in the past. And that could help with the whole problem of like basically why they did this in the first place, where they were almost in a position of just having Ferrari and Mercedes producing engines, which would have been a huge problem.
Mercedes and Renault.
No, because they were worried Renault was going to leave at the time. So that's what they were worried about.
How could I forget? They had the entire crash kit thing.
So like they were worried about that situation. So going to V10s could open it up to where like Cosworth and other teams could basically say, right, we'll build those. Cadillac building a V8 or V10 wouldn't be out of the question either. Like they have a lot of knowledge in that situation.
Cadillac is very blunt in terms of Pat Simmons is the one who's heading the whole thing, and he said no. Mm-hmm. He said we are not on board with any of it. So again, I mean, there are too many hoops to jump. There are two ways it is going to go. First is either you go ahead with these regulations, or probably by the end of this month, we'll know which direction the entire thing is going.
How bad are these regulations, though, that FOM is genuinely considering this?
I doubt they are bad. I think the reality is they've started to realize that the electrical bit is maybe we are over egging the entire thing, which is not how the sport is supposed to go.
Yeah.
The cars would be much slower is the problem.
I think regardless, 2028, 2029, we're looking at V10s or V8s. I think just, I think it's going to happen.
Yeah, it won't be V8 or V10 alone. It won't be a naturally aspirated engine.
I think it might be.
Hybrid component.
No,
I think hybrid component will be there for obvious reasons, isn't it? Because alone, in terms of your
the reason
there's an 18%
the reason I'm not sure about that, to be honest, is that when it comes to high performance cars, right? There's one of two ways people are going, right? And one of them is completely electric because it just makes more sense for high performance cars in terms of like absolute performance. And the other is drivers' cars, which are naturally aspirated sustainable fuels, right? Like Porsche, for example, is heavily involved in biofuels right now. So it's the whole thing of, sure, you like the hybrid for pure performance, but if you're going to go for a hybrid and you want like just ultimate performance, you just go straight full electric because it's the fastest. And if you want a driver's car,
is it the fastest?
Yeah, it just is. Like it's just the fastest. Like even Bugatti now is switching to electric because it's just you can't
hybrid.
Get it.
Yes,
no, Bugatti.
Is something I mean.
Well, even the companies that want just pure performance, their plan is to basically, if they're going hybrid, the petrol or the biofuel engine won't touch the wheels. It will just recharge the batteries, basically. So, because the thing is, what they've realized is what people care about is the actual acceleration in and out of corners or acceleration.
Yeah, but what you're talking about is a very niche market. When we're talking about all these things, they have to be road relevant as well.
Yeah, of course. But my point is,
and when we're talking about the road relevant bit, the reason why an electric or something comes into the picture is initially the V8s that were ultimately outlawed, they had 18% efficiency. In terms of if they're producing 100 kilojoules, only 18 was used. The rest was basically it went out of the exhaust. And that is something when with the turbo or a hybrid, they use the rest of it in a different manner. Yeah.
The problem I'm talking about though is that the way the world seems to be going is either you're going to have drivers' cars, which are like we'll have some long range cars which are hybrid, right, which makes sense. But even in that situation, it's going more and more down the route of there is a petrol engine at the front, but it's a small petrol engine that just regenerates the battery. It never actually touches the wheels. It just regenerates the battery.
I seriously doubt that's not going to be efficient.
But in a lot of the high performance cars, that's the way they're going. Like even Ferraris are starting to go down that route. That's where they're all pushing towards.
I'll check. I haven't been that plugged in.
Well, you either want that or you want the drivers' cars. And the drivers' cars are V10s, V12s, V8s, big power thing. And then, yes, some of them have like hybrid power or electric batteries on the actual powertrains, right?
I know, but what you're talking about is literally 1% of the entire car segment. You're talking about the premium segment you're talking about.
But these cars are always pushing the premium segment.
That's
first,
fine.
and then it
But
trickles
all
down.
these things, when we're talking about a turbo or even a hybrid, these actually have moved into your road relevant bit.
Yeah.
That's
But
what the
think about,
even the
but the Formula One
yeah.
crossovers, what they do is they use Formula One to say, right, we do Formula One. This then goes into our high performance cars, and then 10 years later, that ends up in your road car.
Yeah,
That's the way
yeah.
it always
Okay,
goes.
okay.
So my point is, like, there's two ways things are going, and if you're talking about road relevance from Formula One down, you're talking like 10 years in the future. So the way it's going to start is either all electric, which Formula One can't go. They
There's
legally
Formula
can't.
E.
That's my point. Until 2039, you cannot go fully electric with Formula One.
There's also a big problem. Formula E right now is slower than a Formula 3 car.
Yeah.
What the
But
fuck
like,
are you even
yeah,
doing?
but my point is they can either go fully electric or they can go like, performance
It could
enthusiast
be either of the
cars,
two.
so.
And ideally, look, Formula One is. I think there was a lot of. I think there's a realization that the alternative fuel is probably the future, not electric, because honestly, electric causes a lot of biodegradation. Is probably the word that is the best to use here, and people are starting to get a hang of it.
I think it's just like I just think it's going to take. I do think all electric makes sense, but I think the timeline is way longer than anyone was thinking about, and I think that's the key issue because I think
BYDs are brilliant, by the way. I'm just waiting once they get introduced in India. I'll probably buy one.
My plan is to get one next year as well because the BYDs are here now. They're amazing. Like, and
No,
the thing
in
is,
our case, apparently the import duty will be gone.
they're
they'll be half the
cheap here.
price.
They're really cheap here already. Like their top of the range model is like $40,000 here. So it's like
And the
that's
thing is, they're brilliant.
Well, this is the thing.
They just kill the entire market.
They
That's
have the
whole
same
thing.
like performance. I'm not sure a straight line, but I don't really care about any of that stuff to be honest for an electric car. But like
It's
their
the luxury
performance,
bit, honestly.
their performance in terms of range and everything is as good, if not better, than Tesla, which is what.
Better.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like in a lot of cases, it's better, but their interiors and their luxury is way up. Like Tesla went down that like minimalist route. This is way off topic of Formula One, by the way. But anyway,
Apologies.
Yeah. If you do want to listen to more car talk, I will be bringing more to current and combustion. But yeah, we like their luxury interiors are way better. I don't know why people thought like, we want ultra minimalist when like Mercedes and everyone else had
that. No one thought that.
It's just cheaper.
It was only Elon's idea to keep that cheaper. But the thing is, the cars cost fuck ton, and I don't know the idea behind whatever is, and I don't think we've seen a new edition in the catalog for a while, for a couple of years now.
But the reason I think it's going to be longer though is just that I think like they've realized that to power these cars with the grid we have right now is just not going to happen. So like I think we're going to see a situation where you'll see people who want long range vehicles will be sustainable fuel, and then we'll see like European city cars being electric because that makes sense. You have your city car, like
Europe is not long range in terms of cities, right?
No, and like for example, when I was working with, I had my own company and we were doing stuff with like basically generating leads for electric vehicles, sales, commercial vehicle sales. Even cars like commercial sale cars, they were averaging like 30 miles a day in cities. So if you're doing 30 miles a day, you can charge. Yes, if you have a 500-mile range car, which is possible now, that means you charge it once and that's your week, like all week done.
Yeah.
So, and it was like 90% of car users were doing 30 miles, which just made perfect sense.
That's actually honestly nothing.
So you have electric cars for in the cities, and then for everyone else, you have sustainable fuel, and that's your crossover. Problem is we need nuclear energy, but anyway, this has gotten way off topic.
Yeah.
But,
apologies, we'll get back to the topic.
Yeah. Now, let's get back to it now.
Yeah. Japanese Grand Prix. I mean, enough chit chat about Lando and Oscar.
Yeah.
Your best race until now.
Oh my God. I really enjoy the Japanese Grand Prix. It's just always so fucking late for me here. Oh God, off the top of my head. I think to remember my favorite one, I'd have to go right back.
I know the one I hated the most.
Go on. What was it?
2006.
Oh, yeah.
The fucking retirement, the fucking engine, Ferrari engine just blowing up when Michael was leading the championship. Championship was done, and just like this, gone.
Yeah.
Everything done.
It's Vettel's favorite circuit, though, which is good for us.
Yeah.
Nice. Yeah.
He's done brilliantly. I think 3 wins. Yeah, he had 3 wins.
I'm trying to think because it's been a long time now since I've really fucking enjoyed it.
2005. How can anyone forget that? Kimi
Brilliant,
Raikkonen's win.
Yeah.
I think that's the best race in terms of performance.
The last couple of races have been, like, 2024 was the washed out one. I'm trying to think. Was it? No, 2023.
2022 was the one where I think it was...
Where Sainz went sideways and everything.
Yeah.
There was a tractor on circuit.
Yes. 2022.
Yeah.
Yes. I think where Max won the race by, I think, 23 seconds, and it was a 20-lap race or something.
Yeah. That was incredible just because it was so compact. I remember waiting hours and hours for that, and it was so compacted. To put it in perspective, for the last 6 years, this race has generally been at like 2 a.m. for me. So I've been quite tired. Before that, it was always kind of late night, but not that bad. you know. Suzuka's a spectacular
it's the perfect
track,
time for me. 11:30 a.m. Like perfect. Your mic. Not working.
Oh, God damn it.
Yeah, don't do that.
I haven't bought that new cable yet.
Yeah, I know.
Vettel crossing the line with Alonso, spectacular.
Oh, yes. Yes. That was one moment. Yeah.
I'm trying to think, was it 2012 or 2013 when Vettel won the Japanese Grand Prix?
He won it in 2010. He won it in 2012. He won it in 2013.
Because I think it was 2012 that was the one that kind of...
In 2012, you had Alonso, Kimi, and probably Grosjean retiring.
Yes.
Early in the race. That kind of flipped the championship, honestly. Because it was Alonso having 2 DNFs, one in Spa and second here, which just completely...
Can I be honest, other than 2005, 2006, this sounds weird, but it's one of those tracks where I really enjoy watching it, but I can't think of anything that really stands out in my head, and I'm not sure why.
2007 was nice, 2008 was nice, but they were not on this track, they were in Fiji.
Yeah.
So that was one thing that was different. Other than that, I'd say, I think the problem with Suzuka in the last decade or so has been the fact that we've been going through a dominant era from 2014 till 2020. I think in 2020 and 2021 we did not race in Suzuka. We didn't have a Japanese Grand Prix.
We didn't have Japanese Grand Prix.
COVID.
Yeah.
And probably in those 2 years we might have had a more competitive thing. Other than that, it's been a bit one-sided. 2011 was interesting, where I think Button beat Vettel.
Yes.
If I'm not wrong.
Yeah, I believe so. Yeah.
And then we had a couple of years in Fiji. I think when it comes to Fiji, the 2007 race, probably the battle between Massa and Kubica.
This is one of these strange things I'm trying to think. Yeah, it is a spectacular track, but I don't think the racing has been that interesting for a long time there.
Yeah, because the winner
it's not the
has
track, it's Formula One. Yeah.
So, it's not the track.
I think this year should be hopefully be an interesting one.
I hope so. I just hope McLaren stops stage managing stuff.
Yeah.
I think one of the drivers, they put their foot down and say, just fuck off. Let us do what actually we want to.
Let us do what we want.
Yeah. And in terms of pecking order, what do you think the top 4 look
I still think McLaren's going to be the fastest, especially at this track. Actually, I think McLaren should be quite quick because I want to say Ferrari will be up there, but I've lost all hope. I'm going to say pecking order for the top 4 teams is going to be McLaren, Max, Mercedes, and Ferrari.
I think Red Bull might struggle a bit here because of the aggressive
Red
curves.
Bull will.
Yeah, I mean in
Not
terms
Max.
of including Max, because of the aggressive curbs.
Max can win in a racing bull. Of course, he's going to win in a Red Bull. Stop being ridiculous.
He's not. By the way, rain is forecast. So on Sunday, so maybe around
So Max will win.
55% chance. Yeah, if it rains, he might win. But yeah, I think it might be McLaren, Ferrari, Mercedes, Red Bull. I might be
It
wrong.
should be McLaren and Ferrari. But look, Ferrari will not be there.
For some reason or the other.
Yeah.
They'll tell us
If it
after.
rains, they'll put on slicks. If it doesn't rain, they'll put on wets.
Yeah, I mean, oh God.
Yeah. Plus, look, Ferrari's not going to be there. So
I mean, there's this account on Twitter, Brake Boosted something. And he's a bit like Dr. Obbs, but he's a Ferrari fan.
right.
And I just look at him, and he's literally, you can just see the frustration that the person has. Like, why do you even bother?
Oh God. Yeah,
I mean,
so
15 or 17 years of heartbreak is not enough, then
but you think it's going to be McLaren then Ferrari? You do.
ideally, yeah.
I think it
Ferrari
should be.
drives well over the curbs.
Yeah, it should be, but I just don't think it will be. I think Ferrari will fuck up.
They might, yeah. Mercedes, I doubt it would be that good on a track that is very all-rounded. Like, so that's where my concern comes in.
I don't know. Like, this is the thing. Mercedes this year, it's actually a decent car across everywhere. It's just not a very fast car across everywhere. And I kind of still think, like, there's still something in my head that says that if George can keep just trickling out these P3s, P4s, just throughout the season, I have a feeling that Mercedes has kind of figured out, okay, how to make a well-balanced car that's not like overly peaky. And it's fast enough at the moment that it wouldn't take a lot for them to just layer on a little bit of performance, and all of a sudden George is in this championship fight. I'm still thinking that could happen this season.
Yeah. I think both George and Max are in the same position, but it ultimately comes down to who keeps his head.
I also just think that they're in two slightly different positions car-wise, though, in that one of them has a relatively quick, balanced car, and one of them has a car that's very peaky but very quick if it's like in the right hands, basically.
Yeah.
Like the Red Bull is very, very fast in Max's hands. And that's down to the car. For the love of God, people, Formula One it doesn't matter. It's fine. It's whatever. It's fine.
You're going to see a lot of it this season.
I know. Yeah. It's just ridiculous. Yeah.
Predictions. Finally, let's wrap it up.
Lando to win. Max P2, George P3.
Yeah, that was mine as well. So I'll probably change it up a bit.
No,
I'm
you
not
were going
going
to say
to go
exactly the
with the same
same,
one.
were you?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, that's what I had in mind.
So, both of us have just written Oscar off? Jesus.
Yeah, we are. I mean, he's going to make us bite.
I
What is the word?
went with that because I assumed you were going to say it would be Oscar to win or something after your conversation earlier. So, all right, okay.
I mean, this is Suzuka is Lando's track. He's done brilliantly here. So, I think Plus, with the threat of rain, I'm just taking it into consideration.
You want
so
I can change mine to Lando, Yuki, George.
Imagine if that happens. Okay, by the way, not trick question or whatever, quick question. The last Japanese driver to actually be on the podium in Japan.
No clue.
Jesus, you should be remembering this one. It happened in the last 15 years.
So it's Kobayashi or?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
2012. Yeah.
See what I'm saying? Like I don't remember the Japanese Grand Prix. What is the deal with that? It's like a blank spot in my memory. Because every other track we discuss on
It's
this,
just a racist fuck.
every other track we discuss on this, I immediately think of a race that I'm like, oh yeah, I remember that.
Yeah.
As soon as you mention Japan, my brain just goes Pearl Harbor. Can't help it. There's the old dad joke, by the way, just for anyone listening, which is someone walks in and says, name a state that begins with P and ends with R in America, a state in America. He thinks for a minute. He goes, there is no state in America that starts with a P and ends with an R. And the guy goes, Pearl Harbor. He says, Pearl Harbor's not a state. He goes, well, it was in some fucking state when the Japanese left.
Yeah.
Fair
anyway. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know why, because I think when I think of Japan, my brain immediately goes
The problem is there aren't that many fights for the win.
Yeah, yeah.
That's the big issue.
And also, when you think of Japan, you think of Senna, Prost.
Yeah, you actually go back that.
You go way
that
back.
long.
So you think Senna, Prost, Hunt, Lauda, right? You know, that kind of...
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
about 50 years back.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
There haven't been that many races where, even I think there's one battle for the win that we've had. It was probably in 2013 when Grosjean jumped both Weber and Vettel. That's
yeah.
all.
Yeah,
I don't
so
think
there
we
hasn't been
had
that
a
many.
battle for the win. Yeah, and that's why you don't really recollect as
Because
quickly.
it's annoying, because I'm like, I know I like the track, I like the races, I just can't think, nothing kind of jumps out immediately.
Yeah, exactly.
Not like Italy,
Probably-
for example, when we talk about it, it's like Vettel, immediately. Like,
Exactly. Yeah, there aren't
Bahrain.
that many.
You think of
Bahrain,
like Bahrain.
is plenty.
2021 is a prime example of a recent one that was great.
Yeah.
Australia,
2022.
obviously, there's so many good ones.
Australia is almost every. I mean,
Every
people
race, yeah.
forget 2022 where there were, I think, 3 or 4 red flags. Sainz was
Yep.
crying and a lot of. vacuum was
2014,
going
Daniel
on.
Ricciardo getting disqualified after getting podium, right?
Yeah.
Only Australian ever on the podium there got disqualified. Crazy. And then you go back to obviously 2010. There's so many of them.
Buttons win, yeah. And it's my prediction is I also think Lando is going to win. I think maybe Max might spring a surprise because it's going to rain, but who knows? In P3, okay, fuck it. P1 Kimi Antonelli, P2 Max Verstappen, P3 George Russell.
Okay. Well, if
If it comes true,
amazing. We'll clip it if it comes
Yeah.
true. Yeah.
Yeah.
It'll also make Kimi Antonelli the youngest.
that is precisely why I said
Yeah,
that.
the youngest podium and winner.
Yeah. Just
Yeah.
you can suck on it. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, suck
Thank
on
you.
it. That's what you've been. Suck on it, everybody.
Yeah. Thanks for watching. Take care.
Thanks. Don't forget
Bye-bye.
to subscribe. Bye.